dialogue, which was provided for secure applications.
Okay, I'll blast you out. Welcome to the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce Business Breakfast Series. My name is Cindy Stevens. I'm the program director for the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce. Kim is down in sunny Florida, so you get me today. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. Before we begin our program, I'd like to take a moment to thank our 2021 Business Breakfast Series sponsors, AT&T, Cross Insurance, New Dimensions Federal Credit Union, Nicholson, Mishu, and Nadeau CPAs, O'Donnell, Lee, McCowan, and Phillips Attorneys at Law, and Sheridan Construction. Welcome to our Sheridan friends this morning. The Morning Sun sponsor, 107.9 The Mix is our radio sponsor, and Kennebec Savings Bank is our video sponsor. Today's business spotlighter, who was at the back, was Work Health. They will be giving away an Amazon Kindle Fire this morning. Please turn off your cell phones in consideration of our guests, and please don't forget to complete the evaluation forms on the table. Those are helpful information for us going forward to evaluate additional speakers. We'd also like to welcome our newest chamber members for November, the Bombazine Old Timers Club, Dan Bernier's group, Sunrise Bagel, Wallace Events, and Community Health and Counseling Services. We have some upcoming events, and you can find information and registration for these on www.midmainechamber.com. We will hold a new member orientation and membership refresher on December 8th from 11:30 to 1. It's being offered via Zoom, or if you attend in person right at the chamber office, lunch will be provided. This is a great time to be able to see what exactly you have for benefits as a chamber member, or to get a refresher if you've been a chamber member for a while and just aren't utilizing all of them. Our Meet the Reps event will be held on Thursday, December 9th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Hampton Inn on KMD in Waterville. You can enjoy a nice beverage and food, which will be provided by OPA, while you meet and greet your representatives and get updates on happenings in the legislature. December 15th from 5:30 to 7, we'll hold our next Business After Hours with Height and Bigelow Brewing, sponsored largely by Sam's Work. The event will be held at Bigelow Brewing's location on Bigelow Hill Road in Skowhegan. And for those of you who haven't attended, you do not need to register. We'd love to see you there. The next business breakfast for the new year will be held January 13th right here at the Best Western Plus Hotel. The presentation will be entitled The State of Maine's Economy and will feature Heather Johnson, Commissioner, Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. She'll speak on the elements of the state's long-term plans and give us some updates for 2022. Registration for that includes breakfast, like this morning. And again, please go to www.midmainechamber.com. You can also email me, Cindy, at Mid-Maine-Chamber. Our speakers today are Senator Matthew Pouliot, hope I said that right, Matt, and Amanda Olson, Executive Director of Augusta Housing and Chair of the Augusta Board of Education. When you're asking questions of our speakers, please wait till we get a handheld mic to you, because we do live stream these breakfasts, and that way your questions and answers will pick up on the video. Michelle Jo Lalabi, Thomas College Chief HR Officer and Chamber Board Member, will introduce Matthew and Amanda. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Senator Matt Pouliot is serving his second term in the Maine State Senate and is currently the Assistant Republican Leader. He represents the people of Senate District 15, which consists of Augusta, China, Oakland, Sydney, and Vassalboro. Senator Pouliot currently serves on the Taxation Committee and previously served on the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. Prior to his service in the Senate, Pouliot served the residents of District 86 in the Maine State House of Representatives for 3 terms. While in the House, he served on the Taxation Committee, the Elections Committee, the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee, and the Redistricting Committee. An Augusta native, Matt graduated from Coney High School in 2005 and went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the University of Maine at Augusta in 2009 and is a graduate of Leadership Maine. Matt makes his living as a realtor and is the owner of Pouliot Real Estate. Prior to joining the legislature, Senator Pouliot served as vice chairman of the Augusta Planning Board. He also served on the board of directors for the Augusta Downtown Alliance, where he was the chairman of the Economic Restructuring Committee. Senator Pouliot is currently a member of the board of directors for the Augusta Board of Trade, Augusta Housing Service Corporation, and is a cooperator of Kennebec Savings Bank. Matt has made his home in Augusta with his wife Heather and their dog, Oliver. When not working, he enjoys a multitude of outdoor activities, including traveling and flying airplanes. Please join me in welcoming Matt. Amanda Olson is a lifelong resident of Augusta. Amanda is passionate about her hometown and has poured herself into work and volunteer opportunities that improve lives in the capital city. Amanda currently serves as the executive director of the Augusta Housing Authority, where she has been since 2013. A graduate of the University of Maine at Augusta, she has spent 20 years working in federal and state programs, with more than a decade focused on affordable housing. Through Amanda's leadership, successfully expanded its role through the strategic growth of programs and development of high-quality examples of affordable housing, including the award-winning Hodgkin School Apartments, which created 47 units of senior housing through the adaptive reuse of a blighted historic middle school, and most recently, Maple Street Apartments, with 29 units of new construction workforce housing. Amanda also provides consulting services in affordable housing and is a board member for the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. Currently serving as the chairperson of the Augusta Board of Education, Amanda has also served as past vice president of the Augusta Downtown Alliance and president of the Friends of Lithgow Library during the capital campaign for renovation and expansion. She has been the recipient of the Kennebec Valley Chamber of Commerce's Young Professional Award, the Mayor's Recognition of Excellence Award for housing-related work in her community, as well as several other recognitions. Amanda lives in Augusta with her husband Andy and their children. In addition to volunteering in the community and spending time with family, Amanda enjoys hiking, exploring Maine, and spending time with her horses. Please join me in welcoming Amanda.
Good morning. Thank you for those wonderful introductions. Senator Matt Pouliot and we're going to tag team this presentation. We'll see how it goes. This morning I got in my car and I was headed to pick up Amanda. We rode up together and I was like, why did we agree to this? A year and a half ago, Martha reached out to us and she was like, would you like to present at the business meeting? And we were thinking, okay, it was going to be in December of 2020, and I was kind of like, I don't know if we want to do this.
The original response was maybe not.
She's like, no, it's a year from now. So we've got a whole year to prepare for this presentation, and I'm pleased to be here this morning. So you've heard our bios, we won't get into that. But the thing that I want to talk with you, and Amanda and I want to talk with you about this morning, and this is the first time I've ever presented with somebody in tandem. So this is like, ends up being a little awkward or something, you know, we'll figure it out as we go. But the thing that I want to chat with you about this morning, which I think is extremely important in leadership, and in my opinion, the most important attribute of leadership is the ability to build and maintain trust. So we live in a time in this country right now where trust really is in a historic low. And during my time in service in the Maine State Legislature, I've always been in the minority. You heard that I'm the Assistant Republican Leader in the Maine Senate. When I served in the House, I was in the minority for 3 terms, and now in the Senate, 2 terms in the minority. And in order to get things done, you have to build relationships with people and build trust. And unfortunately, I think that is something that is lacking in this country for a lot of different reasons. And we want to talk to you a little bit about that today.
So I think something that we wanted to talk about in terms of the trust building is how, it takes trust as a foundation to get all of our work done, right? So people have to trust us, we have to have relationships with the people that we're working with in order to get to yes and get work done, like the Hodgkin School, which we'll talk about in a minute. We wanted to share kind of three fundamentals of trust-based leadership with you this morning that have really resonated with us and helped us in our leadership journeys. Is everyone hearing me okay with this mic? Okay, great. I tend to be soft-spoken, so I'm never quite sure. So the 3 C's, do you want to start with that? Okay.
So before I get into that, I want to share with you a quote from Stephen Covey. Maybe some of you are familiar with Covey's work. There's a book that he wrote called The Speed of Trust, which is phenomenal. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to do so. It says the first job of a leader at work or at home is to inspire trust. It's to bring out the best in people by entrusting with them with meaningful stewardships and to create an environment in which high trust interaction inspires creativity and possibility. So I think that a lot of times we talk about what is it that we want in leadership, and I think really at the end of the day it's about people that we can trust, because at least in my case, being elected to office, I have 46,000 constituents who trust me, most of them, to go to Augusta to get the job done on their behalf, and my job is to really continue to work on building that trust with people by doing, what I say that I'm going to do, following through on that, and delivering results. So the 3 C's of leadership really that help build trust are competence, character, and connection. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But what I want to share with you is some statistics real quick, and not too many because it's super hot in this room and it's early and not everybody's got all their coffee in. But a 2021 Gallup Poll was conducted, and it was found that trust in federal government to handle problems is at a record low, 39%. Not good for me as a guy in government. Confidence in the judicial branch is at 54%. That's down 13 points since 2020. And we even saw a rare decline among trust in municipal leaders. So Maine is a really big local control state. We entrust a lot of the decision making in this state to people on the local school boards or the local town councils. But there was even a decrease in trust among those positions as well. And in fact, all major institutions saw a decrease in the percentage of level of trust that people have. All but one institution. Any guesses what that might be? Checking to see if you're all still awake. The police. The police actually saw a 3% increase in the level of trust. However, they still remain at about 51%, which is, if you look over a 30-year period of time, among the lowest percentage rating that they've had. So it's, I think, safe to say that in this country we have a significant level of erosion in trust. And I think it's our job as leaders to help inspire and earn trust, frankly. And the 3 C's are, I think, a good lens to look at that through. So competence, really competence is the skills, knowledge, and experience necessary to create positive performance track record, which in turn builds assurance and credibility. Establishing trust through competence happens when you sufficiently demonstrate results to create a positive performance track record. And Amanda's going to talk a little bit about that through her lens of the Hodgkins Project in Augusta.
Yeah, so, well, with competence, I think a quote that has always really resonated with me is from Henry Ford: "You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do." And so, starting out at Augusta Housing Authority back in 2013, we were a bit anomalous in the sense that, unlike really any other housing authority in the state, with the exception of 1 or 2, we had never owned, developed, or managed affordable housing, which is crazy. And so, getting in the door in 2013, my goal as the new executive director was not to really ruffle any feathers or make any big changes, because I wanted to take time to build relationships with staff and the community, But when I sat down and looked at financial projections for the next 5 years, I recognized quickly that we were completely dependent on one revenue source, which was a federal source, and that source was on a downward track, and that the Housing Authority frankly just wasn't going to be able to remain viable even over a 5-year period. And so I had to make bold change quickly in the organization, and one of the facets of that change involved stepping into the world of affordable housing development. And in doing that, we had to make a promise to the community that we were going to take on this huge project, something that we had never done before. And there was a lot of trust building that went into making that happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So when Amanda and I met through the Kennebec Leadership Institute, that was really, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's put on by the Kennebec Valley Chamber of Commerce. It's been going on for over 30 years now. It's actually where we met Martha. Kennebec Leadership Institute was what really propelled me into service in the legislature. Until that time, I had been involved in the planning board in Augusta and doing some things locally, but really knew that I needed to do more. And Kennebec Leadership Institute really propelled that forward. But really shortly after that, Amanda and I continued working on a lot of projects locally, and one day I pulled up in front of the Hodgkins, what then was the Hodgkins Middle School, and had just recently kind of been shuttered because they built the new high school in Augusta and combined it with the middle school. And I was thinking about Amanda, and she had just recently started her role at the Augusta Housing Authority. And I called her and I'm like, I think that this would be a great place for apartments. And she's like, yeah, I think we could probably get like maybe 20 apartments in there or something. I'm like, I don't know, Amanda, I think that could be a lot more in here, maybe like 40 or 50. I don't even know.
Didn't we go over it together?
Yeah, we did. And so I called Amanda, I think we could do this. And that was kind of like, she took the ball and ran with it, But I think that my point in sharing that with you is that there's a lot of opportunities to build trust with people once you've had an opportunity to work with them and so forth. But you can only demonstrate that confidence through action, And Amanda took that project and ran with it. And now how many units are there? 53?
No, 47.
47, okay. So 20, which is great.
I think I had estimated in the mid-30s.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Was it not? I thought it was 20. No. But Amanda and I first met, going through Kennebec Leadership Institute. We've been able to work together on a lot of things. But, I knew that Amanda was competent because we went through a whole leadership training together. And actually, one thing that's been interesting, I've been through Kennebec Leadership Institute, Leadership Maine, Council of State Governments, Eastern Leadership Academy, Toll Fellows. The Toll Fellows is a nationally kind of syndicated leadership program. Every single one of them started the same way, which was building trust through activities with the people that you're in the cohort with. So, like, I don't know how many of you have been to this before, but they'll have you stand up, right, and then someone's behind you, and they're like, you need to catch this person. And you're like, I don't even know who the hell this is. Like, I never met this person before. How do I know if they're really going to catch me? But you believe that they're going to do it, and so you just kind of stand there and you fall back, and they catch you, and you're like, okay, maybe I can trust this person. It's like a little glass bowl, and there's little marbles being put in, and every little action like that is another marble in there, but it's still a glass bowl, which can be broken really easily as well. So we need to take time to maintain that glass bowl and make sure that it doesn't break, but we also need to continue to add to it so that it's full. And I knew Amanda was competent, right? But maybe other people in the community didn't know that because they hadn't had an opportunity to meet with her or work with her and build that trust. The next C that I want to talk about is character. So if competence is the heart of your organization, character is its soul. Character brings together the compelling authenticity of your organization and shows the integrity of what you do. Use your character and the character that your company has established to build trust and relationships, and then use transparency to state your intent and prove your integrity, allowing those around you to trust more easily.
Yeah, and I think character is just it's who we are when no one's looking, right? And to learn that about each person by getting to know them is integral. for me, in my leadership style, and just who I am as a person, I think intent, which is part of character, I've always been able to convey through authentic passion. I love Augusta. I have lived there my entire life. When I was younger and in my 20s, I thought, this town is pretty lame. I mean, our downtown at the time was really almost completely vacant.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing to do. There was no place really to shop. I'm dating myself a little bit there. And I thought about leaving. I thought, you know, I should go to a place that has cool restaurants and shopping and all of the things that I would want. But I decided that all of those places that I wanted to go to were great because people had invested in them. And why not stay here and invest in the community that has given so much to me? And so that's kind of the foundation for all of the work that I do in Augusta, all of my working for the Housing Authority. You know, I've always wanted to get to a place where I could make transformative change in the community that I grew up in. And being at the Housing Authority gives me that opportunity. You know, I can build affordable housing that will be here after I'm dead. That's pretty amazing to be able to, when you're working in a built environment, to be able to permanently change the landscape in a way that will go on to exist beyond your lifetime. That's pretty profound. And so that's that level, the depth of the passion that I have for my community and my ability to make transformative change in our community is something that I share with everyone that I meet. And I think through that, you know, it builds on character and relationships.
Absolutely. So we've talked about competence and we've talked about character. And I think the third and most important C really is connection. We're all here today together to learn about each other's businesses and learn about what's going on and to hear from a politician and a rock star housing developer. But you have connection is vitally important. You know, if you have competence and you have character, but you're still not making progress, you're likely missing the mark when it comes to connections. And I think connections are the most important glue in terms of being able to build trust with people and move forward. Many of you in this room, I don't know. I know a lot of people, but when I walk in this room, there's a lot of people that I don't know. And that's great because it's an opportunity to make connections with new people and start building trust with some of you as well. And a lot of times, Amanda and I were chatting about this on the way up, we see a lot of people. My job right now is to work on, you know, recruiting candidates to run for this, to the Maine Senate. We're only looking to recruit Republicans in my role. If you have ever expressed an interest in serving in any capacity, the legislature is an extremely rewarding opportunity. However, there are a lot of people that come to the table and they're like, we want to run. And the first question we ask is this person electable? And what we look at is, you know, what kind of community involvement have they had? What kind of a track record have they expressed to demonstrate that they, you know, are unaffiliated, or even if they are a Republican or a Democrat, they don't always vote just a straight party. I would say there's probably like 20% on both parties that just will blindly vote right down party lines. The rest of the time, the majority of the people in Maine are going to vote for who they feel that they can trust and who's, you know, got the 3 C's essentially. And if somebody is like, hey, I really want to run, but they've never done anything in the community and they've never really been involved, it's hard for us to know if they have the level of connections that would be needed to get elected, you know? And so I think, you know, a lot of times what we're looking for, not even just in our leaders in general, is people that are willing to go out and make connections. And I always kind of like look back every week and reflect on the week and how did things go. And one question I ask myself is like, did I do something this week that gave me butterflies? You know, like, did I do something that got me out of my comfort zone? And a lot of times that's making connections with people. You know, a lot of people assume that I'm pretty extroverted. I'm not. It's not like natural for me to go out and campaign. actually don't really enjoy the aspect of going out there. I really like when I get to someone's door and I start having a conversation with them, you know, but it's kind of like going to the gym. You know, you get up in the morning, like, I don't really want to go, but then you go and you get out there and you start talking to people and you're like, this is great. So I really do like that aspect of it, of working with people, but I much prefer actually doing the job. But when you're running for office to do the work, there's a whole campaign side of it, which, as we all know, having just gone through the whole thing with Corridor and before that, Gideon Collins and all the money that's in politics, it seems like there's so much uber focus on the campaigning aspect of it. And sometimes the best people in the job are like the worst campaigners, you know what I mean? They just don't really like that aspect of it. But it's a necessary part of doing it, and it's constantly getting me out of my comfort zone. You know, when I go to someone's door and they're like, no thanks, you're Republicans, slamming the door in your face, like, this is a bummer. Oh, and it's raining out, you know? But, you know, you just got to keep moving along, right? And that's an effort to make connections with those people that I don't know. And Maine really does, it is a state where, because, you know, at least in my role in the legislature, you know, I have 46,000 constituents, or, you know, thereabouts. And, you know, other counterparts that I have in other parts of the country, they've got like 200,000 plus constituents. You can't really connect with all those people. My Senate district is about to change. I'm running for re-election, and it will include the towns now of Belgrade and Mount Vernon. So if you live there, I'd love to speak with you more about issues of concern to you. But I will tell you this, I don't know as many people in Belgrade or Mount Vernon. I know a lot of people in Augusta, China, Oakland, Sydney, Vassarboro. We're gonna have to get used to saying my towns over again, because I've been doing that role now for 4 years. And so I'm gonna have to go out and build those connections in those towns, you know, and that is gonna be, I think, extremely important aspect when we talk about leadership in any capacity, is the ability to build those connections.
Yeah, I'm glad you spent a lot of time on connections, Matt. It's been the most important piece for me as well. I can remember early on in my career, you know, I had this vision of getting to a leadership level somewhere, and was really so focused on being the best worker and having the best results and working as much as I could and more than everyone else. And that really isn't as important as connection. And so what I learned along the way was how important it is to make deep, authentic connections with the people who are important with regards to any goal that you might have personally or professionally. And so I lead with that now. When I want to build a connection with someone new for any purpose, I typically don't start with a meeting in my office. I like to do coffee. I like to do lunch. I want to care about that person. I want to authentically connect with them on a deeper level. You know, I think early on in my career, I did all of the networking events like this, and I got to know everyone's name, and everyone knew my name, and they knew what I did, and I was in their Rolodex, and they were in my Rolodex. But I've really found that...
You still have Rolodex?
He's the one who used this term yesterday. I think we were laughing for that, I'll just say that. Matt, I think you and I graduated from Coney the same year.
Really? It's like, I don't remember that.
So that's what I lead with now, is connection. And I think all of the work that I've been able to achieve, all of the things I'm most proud of, I can attribute back to connections that I've made and the relationships that I've formed at a level that's deeper than somebody knowing my name and knowing generally what I do. You know, when we talk about the Hodgkin School Project, and to start in the capacity as executive director for a housing authority that had never done affordable housing development before, and knowing that that was the direction that we needed to go in, I had to work really hard to build trust and build true connections in the community. And you know, I started out there, just every partner agency leader, every community leader, every council member, the city manager, everyone I could think of, I took the time to make meaningful, authentic one, and spent time getting to know them as people. And I think, Senator Pouliot shared an example of our connection and the connection we made at Kennebec Leadership Institute. And, we had an opportunity to really observe each other, talking about leadership, learning about leadership, participating in different activities. But really, we know each other at a deeper level. I can remember when Matt was excited to propose to his wife. I can remember all of the ideas that he had about how to propose and how.
It was at an ice arena, which was a lot of fun.
And wasn't that where you went for your first date?
Yes, yeah, it was.
Yes.
Well, it was an ice arena. Collapsed. They forgot to shovel the roof, so,
Yeah.
but it's now back.
Yeah, so, I know Matt's dog's name, and I know all of these things about Matt along the way because we've known each other for a long time and we care about each other, and that helps when something comes up where maybe we don't agree on an issue. I'll give Matt a pass because I know what a sweet guy he is on the
I
inside.
wonder how many passes I've got.
So, again, with my read, that was something that I really had to work on. For me to get to a place where I had a connection with the city manager to such extent that I could walk in and say, hey, I have an idea. I want to convert this blighted, historic middle school that you all have funds set aside to tear down. Nobody in the community thinks it's salvageable. Everyone thinks it should be demolished. I want to take that building, and I know that I can turn it into 47 units of beautiful, safe, affordable housing for seniors. And by the way, I think it's going to cost about $10 million, and I've never done this before, and I need it for $1. So, and I got an instant yes. It was like, people were excited about it because I had done all of the groundwork and relationships and connection to make people excited about me, excited about the work we were doing, excited about housing, and it went a long way. It's the reason why that project is there today.
I think what you had mentioned, though, that's really important is it has to be authentic. I think we can tell as humans when people are just trying to make a connection for the sake of checking a box. You know what I mean? I personally have a very deep interest in what I call servant-based leadership. So the lens that I look at the world through is one that I'm here to serve others. And I'm able to utilize my role in the legislature to help people. When people call and hey, I've got this issue, I think they should be able to call the same people that I call and get the same response, but that's just not the way things work, unfortunately. But then we call and they're like, oh, they're right on it, and something happens. That's rewarding for me, but more importantly, it helps that person solve a problem, And I think that oftentimes we interact with different people, and sometimes people are trying to make a connection with you. I don't mean to say this pejoratively, but the analogy we can probably all think of is going to a car lot, right, to buy a vehicle, and someone runs out and they're like, they are trying earnestly to make a connection with you because there's a million options. And I'm not saying that they're not authentic, but sometimes you can tell they've just got sales breath on. They're like, I gotta, make a connection with this person to get them to buy something, and it just doesn't feel genuine and authentic. Whereas if you take time to work on building relationships with people, it can really go a long way. And I call Don, right? And Don and I have worked together a lot over the years. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. It's mutual. Well, thank you. When I call Don, we can just get right to the brass tacks of things. There's no he's not wondering who I am. I'm not wondering who he is. And that goes a long way. And I think that one downside of COVID is that it's really made it difficult for us to make those connections with people. The legislature did its work largely via Zoom last session. It was terrible. It was convenient in terms of being able to participate. We had a lot of participation from different parts of the state where people wouldn't normally have come and testified because it's too far of a drive. The downside was that when we got into a dialogue about issues, my colleagues, they were just on a screen. We weren't in a room looking at each other face to face, or maybe somebody makes a remark and they're have to actually sit next to the person when they said it. So there's a lot that goes on really in that kind of environment that has made it difficult for us to really make connections with people, particularly over the last 18 months. And when we returned to doing business in person, I noticed a whole different tone. We're never going to agree on everything, at least when it comes to the legislature, but when you're able to walk down the hallway and just have a conversation on a sidebar with somebody, looking them in the eye, it really makes things a lot different. It gets back to what I talked about really back in the beginning about the speed of trust. You know, if I've worked to build relationships with my colleagues in the legislature, and then I have a bill that I'm working on, and I've worked with them to maybe help get one of their bills passed or build consensus in my caucus, and then I go to them and I say, hey, look, you know, I'd like to talk with you about this. It just speed things up, you know what I mean? So I think that, you know, when we talk about this in terms of trust and leadership, the 3 C's are vital, but definitely, in my opinion, that connection, which is, I think, when you look at these numbers that we talked about earlier from Gallup and the erosion of trust in this country, I think a lot of it has to do with how we've been forced, really, in a lot of ways, to be distanced from each other. And as human beings, that's just not how we're created to work best.
I agree. I mean, I'll just close with a quick story. Every year I travel to DC to meet with our congressional delegation on housing issues affecting Maine housing authorities, and I typically do that with all of the other housing authority directors across the state of Maine. And this past year, nobody wanted to go because of COVID, and so only one other housing authority director was interested in going down to DC. So he and I went down, and 3 of our congressional delegation were not accepting in-person meetings, which is understandable, and that's happening everywhere. But Senator in person, and for some of her staff, it was the first in-person meeting that they had with a constituent in more than 2 years. And they were so excited to meet with us in person, and they really valued that we took the time to fly down to DC and meet with them in person during a pandemic to talk about housing. And Senator Collins, who typically on a good day because of her schedule will spend 15 minutes with us, spent 45 minutes talking to us about housing issues, and really listened and heard what we were saying, which she always does. She's very passionate about supporting housing work, but I think we need human connection now more than ever, and there's huge value in that.
So let's see, we've been up here for 20 minutes about, I guess, maybe half an hour. So I think it's a good time to open it up for questions. And don't all yell out your questions at once, just one at a time.
Maine Mushroom Company was referenced. I think that was in the ad that was in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just wanted to speak to that because nobody mentioned it in my resume. But so my husband and I have owned Maine Mushroom Company for 3 years, and recently took a break from mushrooming. And one of the lessons, not really a leadership lesson, but a life lesson that I've learned along the way is, you know, when you are doing something that you feel no longer serves you, it's okay. For so many of us in business relationships, in relationships with employers, in relationships with people, in marriages, people hold on to things that are no longer serving them. And so, you know, we are taking a break from mushrooming now, but I just wanted to mention.
I didn't know mushrooming was an actual verb.
It's, I have trademarked that term personally. Yeah, so, but if anyone wants to ask questions about mushrooms, I'm happy to.
Well, there was a crack bust here about a week ago.
I know,
so
we didn't get into
Just making sure this is on. I need to turn it off somehow. Are we on now?
No, turn it back on.
I'm getting no blue light.
If it doesn't work, I can just recite your question back.
Okay.
I can, I'm pretty loud. Jerry, really CEO, Spectrum Generations. One of the things that we're all experiencing, I think, as whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit, healthcare, whatever industry, is staff and employment and getting people to work, back to work. One of the things that I've been noticing is that there's beginning not only what I would call maybe a competence gap that's occurring. Some of it may be, and so to kind of build on your theme of confidence leadership, is that there's a cultural tendency now to start lowering standards. And so maybe, and I didn't realize that you turned, when you mentioned the school, when you mentioned the school, I thought maybe that you got, you were involved in some education. I didn't realize you had turned it into housing, but that was really cool. But, and then, so I'm going to maybe go too tangential, but education, educating towards competence. We educate, whether it be a trade or higher education or just even high school or wherever, that there is this need just to check. You talk about relationships and connections. We just seem to be checking boxes and not really building the next generation's level of competence.
Sure.
So.
That's great. I think I'll start at the macro level with the state, and then Amanda's the chair of the Augusta School Board, so maybe you can talk to it from that angle. You know, in Maine we have, if we're talking about the K-12 education system or PK-12 education system, we have Maine learning results, right? So the state's role in this is to establish kind of some higher level criteria in order to eventually graduate from school, right? However, what we don't have, and in my opinion we should have, and I've tried legislatively to get, and we're making progress, but there's really no demonstration necessary of proficiency, right? So we, for a long time, the state did head down the track of proficiency-based diplomas, where that really became challenging, and it's really difficult to kind of unweave things in a way that it could work. But we talk about the special education population, folks that you know are just not going to have the capacity to demonstrate that proficiency, but need to be able to advance so that they can then have some kind of a meaningful career and or a way of life, you know, after an experience is done. So that was at odds with a lot of the general population that could have and probably should have implemented more of a proficiency-based approach to education, meaning we're not just going to socially promote you because, you know, things have moved along here and you've demonstrated some level of capability, but you've actually been able to show that you're proficient in this, you know. Now, I'm thankful that that didn't happen when I was in high school. I was definitely not proficient in a lot of math. I had to do a lot of remedial math when I was at college, but the point of this effort was so that someone like myself might have been able to graduate and actually be proficient in these things and not have to do the remediation at a higher cost in post-secondary. So that is something that we're trying to work towards, but you can imagine, I mean, this education is an institution, and so changing it doesn't happen immediately. I mean, sometimes it takes generations for that to change. But I do think that there is a renewed interest in looking through that lens of actual proficiency rather than social promotion. But we have in Maine, like I said, the learning results, and then the controls really delegated to the local school boards in terms of what kind of curriculum is going to be put into place and how it is that they're going to take their student body and get them to be proficient in, you know, in the different learning results. And maybe you want to talk about what you guys do at the school board.
Yeah, so something that was implemented not too long ago at the middle school and high school level in Augusta really was focused on what you're talking about, and that's incorporating something into the grading system so that we're not just looking at are you passing your tests and completing your homework. So we have something at the middle school and high school called Habits of Work, and that's a portion of the grade, and that's looking at you know, all of the pieces that would eventually make you a successful employee, right? All of the pieces that are outside of how well you did on your test, but how well are you working in the group? Are you completing your work on time? You know, are there behavioral issues? All of those pieces. The other thing that we've incorporated into the district starting this year is testing, which of course is, you know, is a normal thing in school districts, but utilizing a different type of test that really digs deeper into some of those proficiency issues. And we've provided, although it's been somewhat controversial, we provided our staff with 2 hours of personal development workshop type time every Wednesday where there's a full week of school, to look at individual students and how they're doing in proficiency and coming up with plans to help individual students get to where they need to be in that regard. So I think it's starting to be on the radar for people. I think people everywhere in the community is seeing that that's an issue and trying to find a way to dig down and incorporate that into education.
Yeah, another thing too, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but Sheridan is a sponsor, and I'm going to make the assumption that when you guys are looking for people to work on the job site, your first question isn't how many houses have you framed by yourself, you know? It's like, do you have some core competencies? Are you going to show up to work on time? Are you going to be reliable? These things, right? And then have on-the-job training. But part of our role, I think, and I'm just speaking in terms of government, is making sure that no pathway is closed to somebody, right? So, you know, when I was in high school, I graduated in 05, it wasn't even really that long ago, although it feels like a long time. I had a full head of hair before I started the legislature, and so you'd be a good candidate back there. You wouldn't have a haircut.
No, I wouldn't.
But anyway, so we, you know, when I was in school, it was kind of like a negative, right, to go to the VOTEC. And I told my parents that I wanted to go to vocational school my senior year, and thank God I did, because I think that that was the catalyst that really helped me get engaged in my educational journey and graduate on time. But we have a stigma that's existed for a long time when it comes to trades-based education, and part of our role in government, I think, is to help break down that stigma by creating more pathways so that there aren't, you know, closed doors, and meeting students where they're at in terms of their personality and their aptitude and their interests, you know, to be able to make sure that that pathway is a viable pathway to a career in the state. Because we have more people being born in Maine now, which is a terrible statistic, and the only way that we're going to change that is through net see some of, but also training our young people for the needs of the state, right? And I think that needs to be a partnership. We talked about connections. You know, there needs to be better connections between government and the business community. That's in part why groups like this exist. But creating those partnerships so that we can start the journey for a student, perhaps, but then that is finished. Because really the best training is on-the-job training. But a lot of times an employer, like, I don't know what your requirements are for someone to work at Spectrum, but it might be like you have to have a bachelor's degree. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but maybe it's time for employers to reevaluate that, because there are some people that might not have a bachelor's degree that could be your best employee if given an opportunity. So I think part of it is just really a shift in the way that we're looking at things. And I mean, frankly, it's a crisis now. You try to find people to do stuff, and it's like, I don't even care if you have a license as a plumber. Can you just come fix my toilet? But to your point, when we get desperate, you know, like the bar kind of goes down, you know.
I mean, we experienced that on our job site for our last affordable housing project, which was on Maple Street in Augusta, where I think we ended up with like a 3-month delay because of a sub just not being able to staff appropriately to manage all of the work that they already had in the pipeline, and it's a huge issue. I know for me, the trades is just, it's such a passion area for me. You know, the technical center that we have in Augusta is just, I think, an underutilized asset that we have in our community, and I agree with what Matt said in terms of providing all opportunities to all students. So I think, you know, in high school, and still to this day to some extent, I think you have kids that are just doing really well academically are steered in the direction of college, whether or not that might be what they want to do or where they might make the best living or be most successful or most happy. And so that, you know, guidance needs to open up those opportunities to all students to say, you know, you have an opportunity to, I look at the work that we do and everyone who's on our job site, and I just see, you know, the reward of being able to make a difference in a community in a way that you can see and is around. And my husband he used to own a masonry company, and for years he did high-end stonework across the state, and everywhere we go, even if we've been there 20 times, he is pointing out all of the work that he's done because it's still there and he's still so proud of it. It's a great feeling. And they're making great livings. You know, they're without the student loan debt, So that's huge. I mean, we look at certified payrolls for our job sites at the Housing Authority, and my last project, we had equipment operators making $52.50 an hour, running brand new Volvo excavators that had like Bose stereo systems and leather seats, and I mean, I was rethinking my entire life. But you know, great options for
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any more questions?
We'll let you know. We're stop talking. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting with you all this morning, and fun kind of doing my first duo presentation. I haven't done it before, so thank you, Amanda, for joining me this morning, and you guys have safe travels out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And